The term supernova was coined in the 1930s by a memorably odd astrophysicist named Fritz Zwicky. Born in Bulgaria and raised in Switzerland, Zwicky came to the California Institute of Technology in the 1920s, and there has once distinguished himself by his abrasive personality and erratic talents. He didn't seem to be outstandingly bright, and many of his colleagues considered him little more than an irritating buffoon. Where there are effects, there are often side effects. The car is a boon to mobility, but can lead to obesity, deaths, and pollution. Burning fossil fuel may keep economies going, but wrecks the climate in the long run. In a similar way, there are side effects to information technology in education settings, from childcare to the classroom to the lecture hall and beyond. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art. Domestication is an evolutionary, rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs, and, yes, their flesh. Introverts, or those of us with introverted tendencies, tend to recharge by spending time alone. They lose energy from being around people for long periods of time, particularly large crowds. Extroverts, on the other hand, gain energy from other people. Extroverts actually find their energy is sapped when they spend too much time alone. They recharge by being social. A guild is an association of artisans or merchants who oversee the practice of their craft/trade in a particular area. The earliest types of guild formed as confraternities of tradesmen. They were organized in a manner something between a professional association, a trade union, a cartel, and a secret society. Psychologist Saho Takagi, a graduate student at Kyoto University in Japan, strolls into one of Japan's many cat cafes. These establishments allow customers to pay an hourly fee for the chance to cuddle some cats. They're popular in Japan because so many apartment buildings forbid pet ownership. But Takagi isn't a typical customer. She's not there for feline affection, but to probe their minds. New research shows that during the global financial crisis, workers who stayed in the jobs did not reduce their working hours. Despite claims that cuts in hours have to prevent job losses, the study found that life of people who remained same employers stayed relatively unchanged. 245 others. Each tube-shaped microbot is a sandwich of three materials. A graphene outer layer, which binds to heavy metals. A middle layer of nickel, which gives the bots magnetic polarity, so they can be pulled through wastewater with magnets. And platinum inside, for propulsion. Just add a bit of peroxide to the wastewater, and it'll react with the platinum to form water and oxygen bubbles, which propel the tubes along. By beginning so early, he knows that he has plenty of time to do thoroughly all the work he can be expected to do. All his work having been finished in good time, he has a long interval of rest in the evening before the timely hour when he goes to bed. After a sound night's rest, he rises early next morning in good health and spirits for the labors of a new day. It's not that human activities didn't impact wildlife at all, of course. Heavily hunted species, like white-tailed deer, gray squirrels, and raccoons, were photographed somewhat less often in hunted areas. Coyotes showed up more often in hunted areas. While most species didn't avoid hiking trails, the predators actually preferred them. For diplomacy, the starting point must be that globalization requires bridges and removes barriers. A policy of containment is a difficult strategy in the age of the fiber optic cable, the jumbo jet, and the satellite dish. There will always be the exception, such as the murderous regime in Iraq, where the only safe strategy is to keep it in the isolation ward until it accepts the norms of international behavior. Or the military dictatorship in Burma, which has persistently failed to respond to dialogue. It takes two to critically engage. Margaret Simons explains the changes taking place in the Australian media. She analyses audiences, our major media organizations, the role of government, and the implications of all of these for our society and our democracy. Her examination leads her to the conclusion that the challenges facing the content providers in the modern world are part of a broader striving, a very old struggle. We might call it the search for meaning. Housing fulfills the basic needs that people have for security, privacy, and shelter. While the adequacy of housing is an important component of individual well-being, housing also has great impact on the nation's economy, with its influence on investment levels. Interest rates. Building activity and employment. Tourism is a challenging sector on which divides statistics since businesses serving tourists also service local people. Therefore, it is not straightforward to estimate how much business sector's revenue and how many jobs are due to tourist expenditures. While far fewer people these days write letters and therefore have less use for stamps, there are still a few categories of stamp which attract collectors. Stamps in common use for an indefinite period until the price goes up are called definitive issues, while a more collectible type of stamp is the commemorative issue, honoring people, events, and anniversaries.